Emeralds in my bracelets, diamonds in my rings, a Riviera chateau and a lot of other things. And I'm blue, so blue am I. Lots of ready money in 7 different banks. I counted up this morning, it's about 1,000,000 francs. And I'm blue, so blue, and I know why. I've got Harlem on my mind, and I'm longing to be low down, and my parlez-vous will not ring true with Harlem on my mind. I've been dined and I've been wined, but I'm headed for a showdown, and I can't go on from night till dawn with Harlem on my mind. I go to supper with a French marquis each evening after the show. My lips begin to whisper, mon chéri, and my heart starts singing, hidey-ho. I've become so darn refined that at night I hate to go down to that highfalutin flat that Lady Mendel designed, with Harlem on my mind. When I'm bathing in my marble tub each evening after the show, I get to thinking about that cotton club, and my heart starts singing, hidey-ho. I've become so damn refined that at night I hate to go down to that flat with 50,000,000 Frenchmen tagging behind.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Andrea Douglas, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. I appreciate you all being with us tonight for our last Evelyn Barbour lectures. It's been a pleasure to bring this series to all of you this year. Evelyn Barbour was someone who was a great friend to me, a mentor who helped me in the very early years of bringing the Heritage Center to fruition. You know, a great advisor, and introduced me to so many people in the community as we first started. Miss Evelyn, as we called her, was an educator. She died in 2014. And at the age of 73, I'm sorry, at the age of 78. But in the time that I knew her, I would never have thought of her as a 78-year-old person. She was ageless. She was an educator from to the end, and engaged with the history of Charlottesville. Very well aware of her time at the Jefferson School. She was a graduate, an alumnus of the Jefferson School. She went to Virginia Union, and then also got a degree in education from the University of Virginia. So it's my honor at all times to remember her through this lecture series. Tonight, we are bringing a conversation that's also in relationship to the exhibition that we have on view until January 16th in the gallery. That exhibition is an exhibition by photographer Lola Flash. The exhibition is entitled Salt, and it takes up the question of women who are in their 70s and older, who continue to live very vibrant and important lives. This is all in keeping with our interest in pointing to the role that African American women have played, even though they did not have the right to vote. And as you all know, this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And so we wanted to call attention to Black women. And so for me, this last lecture, in keeping with the exhibition, is sort of the crescendo moment, because the women that we'll be talking to tonight have been in service for their entire lives and continue to be in service in one way or another, moving us forward as a humanity, I would say, and doing so in really important ways. So I'm not going to take too much time with introductions, because I think it's more important to get to speaking to our guests. So first, let me introduce to you poet Nikki Giovanni. She was born in Knoxville, Tennessee on June 7th, 1943. And although she grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, she and her sister returned to Knoxville each summer to visit their grandparents. Nikki graduated with honors in history from her grandfather's alma mater, Fisk University. Since 1987, she has been on the faculty at Virginia Tech, where she is a university distinguished professor. She has received over 50 awards and honors during her career, including book awards, several for Women of the Year, and over 20 honorary degrees from institutions such as Fisk University and Smith College. She has created over 55 artistic works, including poetry, essays, recorded interviews with dignitaries such as James Baldwin, and children's books. She's one of the pioneers of Black female critical thought, living in a time when it was increasingly dangerous for a Black woman to speak her mind. Next, I'd like to introduce Deloris Jones Thomas. Ms. Thomas is a native of Palmyra, Virginia, who currently resides in Newport News, Virginia. After retirement from the College of William and Mary, culminating a 42-year career, she's had time to further her passion to have women's voices heard. Armed with a degree in women's studies from George Mason University, her work on the board of Black Women United for Action, and as president of the Dulles section of the National Council of Negro Women, Ms. Thomas has never wavered. She is involved presently with the electoral board for the city of Newport News, the board of trustees for the Newport News Public Library, the Women's Club of Hilton Village, the Rotary Club of Newport News, Virginia Democratic Women's Caucus, and the Fine Arts Committee Chair for the First Baptist Church in Hampton. In her remaining time, I don't think she has much left though, she travels, teaches quilting classes, and spends time with family, especially the great-grandchildren. And next, I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Sheila B. Coates. In 1985, African-American women were playing virtually no significant management roles in education or government in Northern Virginia. Since large numbers of highly educated, professionally experienced, and extremely talented Black women resided there, a group of Fairfax County concerned women concluded that officials in decision-making positions were unaware of or had overlooked this pool of talent as a viable resource base. The response to this problem was to found Black Women United for Action, an organization designed to increase the visibility and involvement of the African American family. In so doing, the founders believed that they could enhance the quality of life for all. Ms. Sheila B. Coates, founder and president of Black Women United for Action, has spent the last 40 plus years building and sustaining the organization that places Black women equally in boardrooms, church fellowship halls, and cabinet rooms to discuss and make positive effects on Black life. Programs such as Chantilly Muse Mentoring Program, the Little Women's Club, Nikki Giovanni Youth Writers, and the yearly wreath laying at the Slave Memorial at Mount Vernon, BWUFA, and Mrs. Coates have made and continue to make an enduring impact in the community. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I am so looking forward to this conversation. I know that you all know each other really well, so I hope that you, as much as talking to me and our guests, that you will talk to each other. I can already see the smiles that say that you are friends looking forward to seeing each other. So the first question is, recognizing that the three of you know each other and have worked together with the wreath laying at the Slave Memorial at Mount Vernon over several years, can you tell me what keeps bringing you back to community supportive work? What keeps you going in the work that you do? Sheila, do you want to start? Did you hear the question?
I did hear that. I think it's innate almost where we were raised to share with others. And that to me means if you know something isn't correct or right, it's what was the gentleman that just passed, you make good trouble. Well, I happen to have been to Mount Vernon, and it was not what I thought it would have been since I went there in elementary school. And it was like, well, we have to make a difference in here because our ancestors built this. And there was absolutely, only thing that they had was a black mammy doll in the gift shop. Mm-hmm. Remember Deloris on that?
Yeah.
And what happened after that, you can't make a difference because we didn't give up, Nikki. We just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And now today, Mount Vernon is quite different. And the gift shop is quite different with books and other pieces of or artifacts that relate to the fact that our ancestors lived and died there, but they built it so that today you can walk on the same hollow grounds as did our ancestors. We're a part of it, and we're recognized for it in the sense of the program and how it has changed from the first we were there to where it is today. We made a difference, and it's for the next generation. And I thank Nikki and Deloris and all of us who have labored, as you once said, Deloris, labored with love to bring about that change. And that to me is the greatest, as you're almost in your twilight of your life and you can look back, what did you do? We planted a seed, and that was to bring life and recognition of our ancestors at Mount Vernon. And seeing the last dedication was in October, rededication in the sense of honoring them. There was over 10,000 people who saw it because I love the streaming. And it went as far as Africa, and one of our former interns who was in the State Department in Africa saw it. And immediately, and she had worked on the Slave Memorial when she was an intern with Black Women United. And it was such joy to see the next generation who coordinated all of that because of the virus. We elders, we have a chance to just sit back and watch. And so the seed was planted, and they're taking it and they're continually, bringing their ideas. And, Dee was one of the best ones we did, right?
Yeah.
Nikki, I know you didn't see it, but it's still on able to see it. It was just joy, pure joy to know you could plant a seed and watch it grow, and then in your twilight, pass it off to the next generation to take up and with their talent and gifts. I just love it.
Mhm.
I think it's a gift that we live to see this, especially it's very few of us left, maybe 4 originally were there 30 years ago. And so this was our 30th anniversary, and it was just unbelievable. But to see it keep, and Mount Vernon has grown a lot. Can you say, Nikki?
Oh, it has. And of course, we all appreciate the work that you've done, Sheila. But I was thinking when you said that, because I'm not a nice person, one of the
I'm trying to be diplomatic.
one of the things we need in the gift shop is a bed with a black woman and a white man in it, because Jefferson spent a lot of his time in the bed. He did with Sally Hemings.
Sure.
Or we need, that's the truth. Or we need, just that sort of black, the little black figure sitting around their little white father. We need to remind people how all of this came to be. I know a lot of people wouldn't like it. Oh no, but if you don't like what you're seeing, then you should train your men not to do it, because that's exactly what happened. And of course, James, as we know, James Heming was one of the great chefs of America. And we also know they say James committed suicide. And I think that Sheila, you and I would agree. That's not what happened. He was murdered because they were jealous of what he had learned to do and how he did it. So I think that Sheila, we have to congratulate you, and we do. I remember when you called and asked me if I would come to help lay a wreath, and I was so very pleased that you did, because I knew of your work, and I was just so I could drive then. I'm having a lot of trouble. I'm old now, and then so I don't drive very long distance. But I was very, very pleased to be a part of, and I continue to be a part of the Black Women United. And I think that you have done and not only you, I mean,
that's what
Yeah.
it takes.
Yeah. I think
Joel.
we the women found creative ways to preserve and create our history, and we found many opportunities for women to be at the table, to have a voice in what was being made, and our voice brought about change at Mount Vernon and around corporate tables, and it's growing. It continues to grow.
Capitol Hill, definitely.
Yes.
So, that was the last 4 years. We're kind of a little slacked off a little bit, but it's going to be picked up now. Yes, and women, and I'm just overjoyed. Nikki, don't you feel that we're at this time? Dee, I still cannot believe you're 70, but oh, girl, come on. That we still have the enthusiasm and the wisdom to pass on what I think the greatest gift we can give is to the next generations and generations down, what we have learned. And I'm just excited about just the talent that's just around, that's willing to be a part of the growth and the change. Because I remember something, I'm a little it's when my brother once asked my mother, she was always busy, she was always doing things, and she was elder, and he said, when are you going to stop? And my mother looked up at him and said, when they throw dirt on my face. She died at 97. But the thought about she was my role model, and she never stopped. She just she kept going and reading and just learning. And she said you never stop learning.
I often tell young folks today that sleep is overrated.
Yeah. Deloris. Yes. It's so much. I mean, to be a part of it.
Well, I remember that old expression: a man will work from sun to sun, but a woman's work It's never done.
Never done.
Mhm.
I always think of Fannie Lou Hamer actually when I hear that, when it comes to my mind of of the kind of work that she did, because Miss Hamer was a great woman, and now that we have a AKA, and I'm a Delta, and that's all right, but now that we have an AKA in the White House, I think that I hope that we end up getting one of the statues of Fannie Lou
Yeah.
Hamer. I think
That'd be
Yeah.
wonderful. That'd be
And,
wonderful.
I'm very happy. I think the Divine Nine did an incredible job
Yes.
in helping to have this election come out the way that it did. And I think that we should quit calling the so-called white community the so-called what do they call them, white supremacy. They're not. They're white cowards. And I think that we have to be. I am picky about words because that's all I have. But I think we ought to call them what they are, and they're cowards. And they've always been cowards. And if you're looking at what's happening, look at Donald Trump. That's just a cowardly thing. He lost, and he doesn't have enough sense or whatever. Or he's an evil man. But I think that we are people that have to call him that, because there's no point in us being nice to Donald Trump. He's a fool and a coward, and we ought to call him that.
Yeah, and not be afraid of it. But that also sort of brings me to a question. You all are really sort of, first thing I want to ask is, how did each of you meet each other? Because you seem to be really good friends. So who introduced who to whom, and how did you all meet each other?
Wow.
I don't know. She's like so long.
How did I meet you?
Yeah, and me either.
The first meeting was with Sheila, and then I met Nikki.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't remember how I met Sheila. I just knew that when I met her.
Council Negro Women. You were
Yes.
back here in Northern Virginia, Sterling.
Yes.
And I met Nikki and reading her poems, but it was like, well, we're just going after Nikki Giovanni because she's it. She's the powerhouse. We know what she does. She does not mince her words. I learned a lot from Nikki. Good things, but that's how. And Deloris was on executive board. She was an officer of Black Women United, just very talented woman. And then she brought her daughter and then her granddaughter. So 3 generations at one time were involved in Black Women United. And that's what we wanted, the Nikki Giovanni Youth Writers. Nikki was kind enough to let us utilize her in the sense of her talent for the next generation of writers, in the sense of how it affected the slave memorial.
Okay.
How we ended up with the Nikki Giovanni Youth Writers.
Okay.
We had 2 sisters that won it last year from Nigeria. Really with beautiful writings about their experiences and what the slave memorial wreath-laying ceremony meant to them. So we have quite a bit of collection on it. But Nikki's just super.
Yeah. Well,
No.
the reason why I asked the question is the 3 of you feel together like such a force of nature, like there is a way in which the 3 of you are sort of connected, that you can see the power and the work over, this amount of time.
Sheila and Deloris are the power. I'm just sitting there with
we're all together.
When you think about Black women, we really never don't know each other. Sometimes we don't know each other's names or where we came from. But running into Black women, any place that you are, we know each other. We do know each other.
Absolutely.
We embrace each other as all over the world. You can be in Germany or in Italy or something, and you'll see a Black woman. And all of a sudden, what does she say? Hey, sister.
Yes.
She doesn't say stranger. She doesn't say, who are you? Hey, sister. And you go, hey, sister, how are you? Black women embrace each other. And I think that is our strength. And I think we learned that from I did from my grandmother. I think we learned it from my grandparents, that when you see a Black woman, that's your sister. We treat each other that way.
That's right. Never look down on anyone because of any socioeconomic level, as we put it, or bougie either, Nikki.
So that brings me to the question, though. Given that as you've all sort of described, Black women have a particular ability to see each other. Nonetheless, we also understand that the difficulties in society of being a Black woman, that they are, and some would argue, Black women are maligned. So how do we ensure that Black women continue to receive the flowers that we all understand we should receive because it's just generally of the power that we bring to each other and to the work that we do?
I think, first of all, we have to respect ourselves. We have to give respect and receive respect. But we have to celebrate ourselves. You know, you can't always wait for someone else to pat you on the back. That might not happen. So we have to go about celebrating ourselves, for one thing.
True. That is so true. But at the same time, I always want to remind sometimes, and I have been in this situation where the pilgrims or the women who have claimed a certain position, sometimes forgets how they got there. And they don't necessarily want to bring others along. So we have to remember that once oppressed, we do not become the oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
I know we fought through that, and that was something that still sticks with me today when I cannot say enough about women understanding how we need each other and how important it is to support each other and, to be of assets to each other in the sense of growth.
Mm-hmm.
We just need it. We just need that camaraderie too, as Nikki just said. And, I guess I'm arrogant a little bit. I was always taught we were the strongest sect of the human person, that a Black woman we had indelible strength. We were strong. And we had to, because back in slavery time, my grandmother used to tell me that what is it, stifle the male if he's strong and he was wanted to take care of his family and do the things that a man would want to do. A mother or woman would in order to curtail that strength would make him weak, just so that he could live. Because if back in slavery, if you came up against the white master and you were protecting your child or your wife, or that instance, you'd end up dead. And so the woman would weaken him so that he could live. My grandmother told me that, and it was like, wow. So that's why I always felt, or I did back in the generation, to see why Black men were beaten down so much. Well, talking about back then, look what happened all this summer on social, the crimes and the things and the social change and justice. How many of our Black men are killed?
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost makes me think about when grandmother talked about that. You as women have to protect your men. And to protect them, you had to weaken them. Oh, Lord have mercy. If it wouldn't have been for me, because I just cannot believe that I'm less than a person because of color of my skin or because of my being female. I can get my switchblade out on that one. No, I would be nice. Be nice or be nice for that.
I think that Sheila has a point, but, and this is going to be my but. One of the things that happened with this election, which was so wonderful, is that finally the young Black men
Yes
came out and voted.
Yes.
And as they should know, and we are the people who keep saying that to them, if you're registered to vote, then you're going to be on a jury trial. And if you get on a jury, you can call some of these people guilty. And I think that, again, some of the men have not understood that it's life and it's a game, but you have to play it. And so every game that you play is not football or basketball. Some of it is going to be politics. and you have to do some of the things that you have to do. And one of the reasons that this election turned out so well, not just because we defeated Trump, because he ought to, but because now most of these people actually will end up being called to jury duty. We do have so many Black men who are, in fact, lawyers. They're going to have to call Black men and Black women on the jury trial. They're going to have to be there, and they're going to have to be a part of it. This is important. And I was talking to my son, Sheila, you know my son, the other day. It's time, since the police, I don't think that we can, what they call, defund the police. I think that it's time that the police had to run for office. They're supposed to be servants of the people. Then they ought to be like every other so-called servant of the people, like the representative, like the council member, like anybody else. They ought to have an area, and they ought to have to run for office.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's, oh no, yes, they should. And they also ought to know, and I understand what Sheila's saying, and I say again, but I know, and I know Sheila has to know, and so does Deloris. I know that you do not need authority and power. One or the other will do. And so you don't need a gun and the ability you don't need that power and authority. You need one or the other. And I think that it's time that it's not the police, it's the idea of what the police have. And having a camera is not sufficient. We need to take those guns away. And somebody's going to say, well, then the crooks will kill us. Well, maybe they will. But after a while, everybody will get tired of killing everybody. You haven't gotten tired in 200 or 300 years of killing us. You haven't gotten tired. Almost every week, some Black man or Black woman is being murdered by the police. And these are just people who used to be Klansmen. They used to have a hood over their faces, and they used to come out in the middle of the night and lynch people or rape people. And now they're policemen and they put on blue. And we have to do something about that. And we have to do a lot of thinking about how do we want to handle that? So I want them to have to run for office. I think that they should have to be able to say, this is how I look at this community. This is my district. And this is what I'm going to take care of. And these are the people I'm working with. Because right now they don't owe anybody but some evil Nazi like Donald Trump. And that's not right.
I want to do that because we have I've been happy since November 3rd and November 6th. And you bring up that I don't want to get unhappy. Excuse me, I'm trying to be very but anyway, women, I just think we're stronger. We're just born to be stronger, and we have so much, responsibility as women. I think to lead. I was on a panel once when we were talking about race, and it was 3 white women, professional, and myself. And I said something to the point of women were the greatest persons that promoted racism and bigotry and etc. And the lady got very upset with me, and I'm like, everybody came at me, and what I said right on the panel. But who nurtures that man? Mm-hmm. Who helps and who teaches him? And it all ends up when you have the values and the morals and et cetera, you're trying to teach the child. But when they get a certain age, it's there. And it's mothers who nurture them. And so it's deep rooted at that point, in how they change or how they grow will depend on the exposure you give to the child will have. But basically, I felt very strong about that, in the sense of it was the women who promoted racism greater than the men. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain age, the male does. And I think it's when they compete for the green dollar. That's when it begins worse, for when racism really comes out. But, I didn't mean to get on that subject. I'm sorry.
So let me ask a question so that we can sort of focus our conversations a little bit more about some of the ideas that we've been talking about. So over the course, I mean, you've all been in this game for enough years to be able to maybe comment a little bit on the landscape, right? From the moment that you started even Black Women United, how do you feel the landscape has changed? I mean, we have some markers here in Virginia. We've got the first 2 Black women who are going to be running for gubernatorial office. That's a clear marker, right? So bring me from where you all started to that point today, and let's even talk about that, because these 2 women, in and of themselves, they are really interesting in even in their similarities and oppositions. And so I think the 3 of you would really be it would be interesting to hear from you about that landscape and where we find ourselves today. Deloris, do you want to start, since you've been sort of involved in the politics of things lately?
I think the landscape today is in turmoil, but we've been there before. We can't give up. We still have to work at it. Been there, done that. We have to move on. The things that women in politics are battling today, they have to battle the white man thinking that we're going to take their place. And then there's the Black man that says, well, I want to come first because the white man had the slot, then the Black man gets the slot, and then the Black woman. So we're coming last again. But we have to work, and we have to support the women. The women out there today, they are smart. They have a lot on the ball. They have experience. And there's no reason that they cannot win an election, a statewide office. We just have to get out there and put our money, put our energy, use all our connections to help these women get elected. And you've seen it, just like the Democrats got control of the House and the Senate in Virginia, and look at all the changes that took place. So if you have a woman at the table, think about the kinds of changes that will take place. And I think we have to look at that and then go and work and support them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Nikki, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I was waiting for to see if Deloris was finished.
Oh,
well,
sorry.
I think, first of all, it's not a question of I am a woman and I should therefore be. It's a question of what is your program, what do you have to say, and how are you going to bring what you have to say to people. I think that's more important than whether or not, I mean, we've all heard some Black men, Ben Carson, I was so glad when he got COVID, and I was just so sorry. It made me so happy, because Ben Carson was a fool, and he should. But every woman, I mean, every woman is not for us. We're wanting the women that are saying, this is my program and this is what I want to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. I've noticed that none of us, because I think I mentioned it, but we have a vice president of the United States who is a Black woman. And so now we have to see, what is Kamala Harris going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I was laughing because I said, well, if I get invited to the White House, which some presidents have, and I didn't, the last couple of presidents, but you can't be invited everywhere. I said, I'm definitely wearing my Delta Sigma Theta. I have a tie. I said, I'm definitely wearing my DST tie. And somebody was laughing. I said, why are you doing that? I said, because the AKAs were not going to march behind Susan B. Anthony, if you recall. They said, no, we're not. And the women who broke away from AKAs, and AKAs are good people, don't misunderstand, but they became Delta Sigma Theta. And they said, it doesn't matter where we march. It's more important that we do, because everybody knows Susan B. Anthony was a rich, crazy old bitch like all the rest of them. And what she wanted was to be, she wanted her vote. Mm-hmm. And what we're now looking at, I mean, if you look at people, when the men say that, there are very few people on earth as dumb as Clarence Thomas. So we know that we don't want another Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court because he doesn't have sense. But we know that there are some other things that we are trying to do. I hope that this election, coming up with the governor election here in Virginia, I hope we get I hope we get good people, and I hope we get good people who get good people. But that's what's more important than anything else. The Democrats were incredibly smart, and I don't know who did what because I don't have the history on that right now. But somebody realized, okay, y'all get out of the race because the most important thing is to beat Donald Trump. And we're going to do that if y'all get out. And so everybody had to get out, and they did. And then somebody said to Biden, now what you need, but everybody, you two have talked about women, but somebody said to Joe Biden, what you need is a Black woman. And if you don't get a Black woman, you're not going to win this thing.
That's
and,
right.
No, that was
Right.
clear.
Yes.
That was incredibly clear. So he did get, and rightfully so, Kamala Harris. Now I had a bet and I lost it. I said I bet with any sensible man is going to get Stacey Abrams, because Stacey Abrams is just an incredible little genius. She's wonderful, and we're going to see if she's able to pull Georgia out, as we are hoping that she does. She's a great gal, but we're needing her in the cabinet at some point.
Mhm.
We simply are, because she's not that other people aren't, but Stacey is wonderful. And I think that we have to look at who's working for us and who's not. And what's going on in Georgia is on the back of Stacey Abrams. And I don't think we can overlook that.
True.
Yeah. And the someone sent me meme, I guess it's called a mime or meme, 3 Black women shortly after the election. It was Stacey and the mayor of Atlanta and Kamala Harris. And what was common, not only that they were Black, African American, but they had all attended HBCUs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great accomplishment. And you think about that, 3 powerful Black women who changed. It was like the minister said, was commentators asking the question. He said, well, we came from picking cotton to picking presidents. What a powerful statement that was, because the Black vote. But you know, I go back to Virginia. I'm a 6th generation Virginian, and have watched it grow from and from the worst part of Jim Crow to where we are today. And I do see that. I remember when the former governor worked hard on getting the incarcerated fighting to have their right to vote. And it was thousands of folk that regained the right to vote after they had, served their time. And I had an opportunity of working with a young lady too that were from the Chantilly youth community that had helped me with voter education throughout the years, but I never knew she could not vote. She had lost because of her youth, or it was young, but she was incarcerated for a bit and she lost the right to vote. And it was such joy to work with the state and work with that committee on making certain that once incarcerated, were able to get the right to vote. And Virginia was one of something like 8 states that where you could not. But because of great people in the state who saw the wrong, and it was under, I think, Governor, I know it was under the former governor, just announced he's going to rerun.
Yeah, McAuliffe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His leadership that we ended up getting that through the state legislature to give the right back to vote to those incarcerated. And it was joy to then work through the system and process with these 2 women to have them for the first time vote. It was just enormous. And that was a joy for Black women United too. It's voter education. but to make sure, Nikki, you're absolutely right, and Deloris too. We all know that without that right to, we have the right to vote. If we do not get understanding of people to understand how important it is, that's all. We've been, and Deloris is very much familiar, but we've been under the White House Women's Outreach for 3 presidents. And we were very much a part of the roundtable discussions that were weekly through the different agencies, but it was with the White House and regularly. And I'm hoping that we'll regain again the opportunity to have women at the table. And this is when they, many of the high level discussions were about policies. And we did have some input into it, remember, Dee? And those are things that you can
Yes.
say things, and you wonder if it's going to make a difference. And it does, Nikki, right?
Yeah.
It does, and it should, only if the most important thing for the woman at the table is to say the truth or what she is believing in. Because a woman sitting at the table is just sitting at the table.
Oh, yeah.
She is not
Yes.
going to stand up for something. The most
Right.
important thing on earth is not to win an election. The most important thing is to get some information out. And whatever women we are having, that's what they're going to have to do. And that, you know, I mean, it's so serious because so people, everybody we want a black woman. That's going to be wonderful. I'm happy for everybody, but I know that whoever is sitting at that table has to say something, has to be willing to put their, as it were, balls on the line, has to be willing to, in fact, one of the things that happened with Donald Trump, aside from being evil and crazy, is that nobody wanted to tell him this is what's going
And he's
on.
evil.
Nobody wanted to tell Hitler, this is not a good idea to kill 6 million people. No one wanted to tell Mussolini. Everybody wanted to sit there and say, well, I understand. Or, yeah, it doesn't matter. You have to call an MF an MF. And somebody sitting at the, see, I won't sit at the table, they won't let me because I will. That'll be my first word. Listen, MF, this is not what's right. And then everybody said, well, Nikki always curses people out. Well, some of them need to be cursed out.
Yes. So
Yeah, no, I mean, so it depends on how we come to the table. And I think
yes.
that's important. You were talking about McAuliffe, the former governor who's now running, and the work that he did. Well, I'm glad because I liked him. And we're going to have to see what he's putting on the table, to see what's going against it, because you just can't say, oh, I'm just going to do this. You don't vote the color. I remember when I was asked, and it was really a funny thing, Sheila, but I was asked, you know, well, what effect does Biden's vice president, what effect does Kamala Harris have on your vote? And I said, you know, because it was a stupid question. You don't vote for the vice president, you vote for the president. And the president's the first decision that he made that I appreciate was that he picked Kamala Harris for the vice president. So to me, it showed that he had some sense. So this is where my vote is going. But we have to keep telling people, we have to keep reminding people that there is something called the truth, and there's something called your job, and your job is just a way of getting up in the morning and making a living. And if you can't make it one way, you'll make it another. But you get sick of that. I wrote a letter, and then I'll stop, to the New York Times, because what I wanted was a page for Jericho Brown. And I know you know him, Sheila. And he won the Pulitzer. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be nice? And I asked a couple of friends of mine, because we work together all the time. I said, let's get a page in New York Times. Congratulate him. New York Times said, well, a page costs $100,000 and something.
Right.
I said, you got to be kidding. If he had murdered some people, he'd be on the front page, and everybody would love it. And everybody was like, oh, you know, you don't be that way. And so I wrote a letter to the Times, and I said, you know, all you have is green paper, and all I have right now is white paper. But we are in a pandemic. My white paper is called toilet tissue. It's worth more than your green paper, because you can't do anything with green paper. You can't even go out, but you can at least wipe your ass with my paper.
Oh, Lord.
I had to say it because maybe nobody had reminded them.
So we've got time for
just paper.
We've got time for one last question that I want all three of you to answer, okay?
So at this stage of your life, what is the one thing, or what would you like to impact the most at this stage of your life? Sheila,
Oh, okay.
do you want some more time? I'll ask Deloris this question.
We're doing it. We're
Uh-huh.
doing it. Don't. It's encouraging. It's to me. I had the greatest mentors, and they were older women, and they didn't stop. They were, some of them were not learned, some didn't have a high school diploma, but boy were they wise. They had been working in the community for years, and they made changes. And what they passed on to me was the belief that I could make a difference. We can make a difference. And to me, that's what our responsibility is, to bring about change. And Nikki, I've been in some very uncomfortable, I was more diplomatic about some of the situations I had to do to be able to make about change. I had some stories too, but the first Black woman general in the entire military, Hazel Johnson Brown, was my mentor. In many times I would be at a kitchen table just ready to give up, and she would tell me, "Now, what's the issue?" And we would sit there. She was very active, member and advisor to Black Women United, and I was a little short-tempered and wanted something done when I received a letter asking me to, well, you little Negro women, you all done this, now we're going to take over. And sent that position to me after we had worked so hard on the project. It's like, okay, but now we're going to take it over. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. And I pulled a group together. And it was mostly Black professionals. And they said, well, that's their policy, Sheila. You're going to have to, they have it. And I was still not going to give in. And I went to her and I was like, she said, well, let's sit down and analyze it. What is it you want? Well, I wasn't ready to compromise. No way. We had worked so hard on the project and I wasn't about to let you take it over. And so she said, all right, let's piece by piece by piece, what it is you want for the ultimate goal and how we're going to get there. And first thing she told me was, whenever you go into battle, know your enemy. And second thing she taught me was, give your enemy a way out with dignity. Well, I didn't want to know. So the end of the story was, I learned tremendously how to keep your goal in the mind, what you want, and how to take steps to get to it. And I never gave up that compromise. I would have been here all day long telling you what the letter said and who sent it. But it was like, oh no, we will not. That was to me a strong thing on my mind, to be able to use this gift that Hazel had given to me. And many times I have used it, many times, so that I did not let my emotions take over, and I would have had my switchblade out. Sure no. So it ended up passing on the knowledge that I learned from my elders in community. And there were some strong Black women, and many of them had not, the opportunities we had for each generation, but the wisdom was just insurmountable. I just loved them. And sorry to say, only about 4 of us are left now for originally that started. And it's been a joy to make the next generation to pass it on. Mm-hmm. That's enough. I just love life and love the children and the next generation. And it's our responsibility to pass it on. Can't take it.
Deloris, how about you? What is it that you, what kind of impact do you want to make at this stage?
At this stage, I want to continue to work with the younger women. I want them to realize that don't discount the gray hair, because with the gray hair comes wisdom, comes influence, commitment, connections and funding. and the ability to speak freely. Not quite as freely as Nikki, but certainly when you get to a certain age, you kind of speak your mind and apologize later. But I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I would like to continue to work with the young people to reach out and do as much as we can for our communities.
Mhm. And Nikki, so this will end with you. What do you see your frontier? What is the thing that you'd like to impact at this stage?
The only thing I would really like to put into the mind is that you have to know who loves you, and you have to know who hates you. And you have to know the people who love you are the people who you have to love. And the people who hate you, you have every right to hate. Because everybody wants to make you this big Christian. Yes, Jesus loves me. Jesus didn't love everybody. And you're no better than Jesus. So you have a right to hate people who are hateful and crazy, but you have a responsibility to love people who love you. And there are a lot. I couldn't agree more. There are just a lot. And that's all I can really say, because you have to know the difference. You have to know who is there cheering for you, who is there wanting you. That's my baby. You know, I remember graduating from kindergarten, and people were saying, and I'm serious, and we're all old enough to remember kindergarten graduation. And you got the piece of paper, and your grandmother said, "That's my baby. She graduated." Yeah, that's who you owe your love to, not the rest of these people. You owe your love to them. Everything else is going to work if you keep loving who you know you should love.
Wonderful.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for this conversation, because, you know, for those of us who are sort of in the middle of our careers and trying to figure out how to get it right, I always turn to women who have walked the walk and done the work for advice, for guidance. And so I feel like I've gotten some of that tonight, for sure. And, you know, it makes me feel good to understand that where you began your work and where you are today, that there is still that thread that keeps you committed, keeps you interested, keeps you involved, and also caring about wanting to bring those of us who come behind you along with us. So we greatly appreciate the work that you've done. I know that everybody on this call wants to go, thank you. So I'm going to do it for them.
Did.
And hopefully you'll get to Charlottesville and see the exhibition.
Yes.
But I really do appreciate your taking time out of your busy lives to spend a little time with us. And so saying that, I applaud you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's good seeing you. It's good seeing you, Sheila and Deloris. I haven't
Good
seen
to
you in a
see
while.
you.
Yeah.